Look, you and I have spoken previously about this Robodebt scheme, subsequently ruled unlawful, which used an automated system that measured a person's average income, and the Morrison government used Robodebt to claim hundreds of millions of dollars in alleged debts from 433,000 Centrelink recipients. Now, the government settled a class action in 2020 for a total cost of $1.8 billion. What are you seeking from this Royal Commission?
This is not just about the victims getting their debts written off or the money they repaid being paid back to them. That's happened. Mind you, that's only happened because of the class action, not because the Morrison government worked out it was wrong. No, this is about how can we have an unlawful scheme raised where debts are raised. The power of the state is used to raise unlawful debts against nearly 500,000 Australians, many of them on the, on the fringes, who are vulnerable. It's unlawful. How does a government, first of all, conceive of an unlawful illegal scheme? And then after 4.5 years of complaints, court decisions, learned experts, advocates, the opposition, the individuals complaining, for 4.5 years, they just stubbornly ignored all of the criticism of the scheme. So how did they get it so wrong in the first place? Who didn't check the legality or ignored it? But then secondly, we still don't know who decided for 4.5 years to ignore the voices of the people.
Yeah. I mean, that's the guts of it, isn't it? They had legal advice that the scheme was wrong and they persisted with it. Now, I note in comments that you've made, you're saying that these dire financial circumstances that innocent people were forced into caused trauma, which has been linked to cases of suicide, depression and family breakdown, and you're aware of that.
I've met personally 2 families who believe that the government debt collection processes sadly tipped them over the edge. I just say to people who say, oh, well, you can't know that. We don't know why someone takes their own life, but the families, the people closest to them, say that the pressure from the government was a aggravating factor, which has then unfortunately led them to the most terrible of outcomes. But the trauma isn't just for that most extreme case. There'd be people at university who were, working some weeks, but other weeks were eligible for modest income support payments. When they had a debt order against them, they couldn't get a job. There's other people, a lot of proud people rely on Centrelink as a last resort, and then they've got the stigma of being viewed as welfare cheats because somehow they've gained some unfair advantage because the computer said they did and no one bothered to check if it was true.
So will we know why the government persisted with the scheme even after this tidal wave of complaints? I mean, there are about 30 cases, as I understand it, and the Administrative Appeal Tribunal ruled illegal. Will the Commission investigate whether ministers or senior public servants deliberately ignored the findings of the AAT or other legal advice about Robodebt?
We will get to the bottom of it, absolutely. Catherine Holmes is a formidable judge, head of the Queensland Supreme Court of Appeal. She's politically completely independent of all points of view, of all parties. We will get to the bottom of this. For those who say, oh, well, they got their money back, we don't need to worry anymore about it, I just say when a government systemically breaks the law for 4.5 years against hundreds of thousands of people and it ignores legitimate questioning and evidence about the wrongness or the unlawfulness of the scheme, something was really wrong. And the Parliament couldn't force the government to get back on track. It took a class action to force the government to repay the money, so the Parliament couldn't do it. It took the Victorian Legal Aid Commission to take the government of the day to court to force them to get some rulings that it was unlawful. And at no stage has any senior public servant or then minister ever said how this came to be. And it's as simple as we don't want this mistake to happen again. Computer algorithms are part of the future of this nation, but we need to make sure we put in place the checks and balances, that we just don't simply assume that if the machine says the person's wrong, that we believe the machine and not the person.
Well,